Okay, let's do a little talk about review of links, and then I'm going to demo some links. And I'm actually going to go into a tangent and show you something else to do with color, and even get a little ahead and show you something to do with floating. So this is from a presentation from last week. Just remember that this is how we style links. First, we deal with the underline. Chances are we remove it. Text decoration is underlined. Remember, A would be a link. href, A is links. So A text decoration none means there's no underlining. Why do we do that? Here's the weird thing. Because by default links are underlined, we tend not to do underlining anywhere in HTML or on websites at all, because people will think it's links. All right? So we reserve that for links. But these days, we tend not to use underlining. If you like underlining and you want to use it in your links, either just keep this, don't do this at all, or perhaps you just want it to come back on the hover or something. Just add the text decoration, make it none here, and then add text decoration on the hover, for instance. But these days, although we still don't do underlining for other stuff, we generally remove underlining just because for stylistic reasons. And this is all presentation, right? But this is a very useful presentation because we have to make sure we know what a link is. When we look at a page that something looks different, we know to click on it. And therefore we give a link, usually we give them a color. We could do lots of different kinds of styling here, but we usually just give them a color. And we like to know when they've been visited. Okay, so then we tend to give it a color that's a little bit maybe different in some way or other, but less attention getting too. It might be a version of the other color, just duller, or it might be something else that's just duller. So we have static, we have visited static. We call it static, but it's really a link. Okay, that's where that L comes from in the LVFHA, and the two ways you can remember it. We need to have all of these and in this order too. So that's V. Then focus and hover, we say they're the same thing. What they really are is, hover is when you hover over a link, how it changes, and focus is an accessibility issue. There are people who can't use a mouse and instead tab through web documents, and if you tab to one, it would be called focus, and you get the same, therefore you get the same behavior either way. So we tend to make these the same, but we do want to include both of them for accessibility. And we almost always use a background color here. A background color almost always comes on, and sometimes we actually leave change the foreground color also. We could do that. And then active is when we throw in there just because we're supposed to have it, but it seldom ever gets seen. We can make this the same as the focus hover if we wish. It has to do with what the link looks like at the moment we click it, which usually goes by too fast to notice. That was about link, so the pseudo classes, I'm not going to go over those some anymore. Link design best practices, and this is actually in the assignment we're going to be looking at when you go onto this, when you have to use this into color 2 and 3. Link, how you style links is one of the key things in a color scheme. And it takes a lot of thought, and chances are you won't get it right to begin with. You probably have to have some changes. Links have to stand out, make sure they're readable, but on the other hand, you don't want them to be such super bright colors that they like burn your eyeballs too. We don't use underlining anywhere except links, and even then, we tend not to use it. It's your decision. Consider switching foreground background on hover focus. I will demonstrate this for you in a change to the Bistro page. What this means is, already you've got a background color of some kind, and a foreground color is the color of the text. What if you switched those two, right? Did some kind of a switch around on those when you do a hover. That's an option, or just do some other background. You have to make sure that when you hover, you can still read it though. Consider making visited stand out a bit less, but it still must be readable. Has to be different enough we know it's not the same as the A-link static state. Some designers make it lighter or grayer. Avoid target equals, that would of course be the targeted links that therefore open up a new tab. It's generally frowned on a little bit. You can do it if you want to though. Consider expanding padding on links. Some people do that. So you can do all kinds of things to links. And also I would say consider bolding links. Okay, that would be an option because You might make some good plans for color for your links, but if there's not very much type there to hold the color, we won't see them that well. You may want to group, active, hover, and focus. Yes, those could be the same thing. And then background images, we're not going to do that right now. Let's go ahead and talk about links in a more practical way. Here I have some examples. Let me run this. This is the Bistro document, right? But I jammed some stuff at the end here, just to show you a few things. We can, when we hover over a link, it could change color. That's typically a typical hover thing. It could also change the background color, okay? One we don't see very often, but it's possible, you could change the font size. Anything you can do to text, you can do it in an A hover, for instance, A focus. You could change the font family, which is pretty darn weird. You could change it from sans serif to serif, for instance. You could change text decoration, right? So that means add underline. That could be in there too. Where's the styling for this? Well, it's a bit of a cheat, actually. To make all these come out here like this, I had to do the link styling a little bit differently. So I only wanted to show you the hovers also. So I only have those states. So maybe it's not a great example for you. It's not for you to copy from, because of course you have to have all the states. But I will, oops, sorry. Here's the HTML for that stuff, right? But it's back up here. Here it is. And I bolded all those also. Those are all bolded. Okay, here it is. So the first one is just when we go to hover, we say I just added a different color text. The background color stayed the same. When I went to hover on this one, I changed the font size to 150%. When I went to hover on this one, I just added a background color. Okay. When I went to hover on this one, I made the font family serif. And actually I added padding also. You can do that. Anything you can do to text, you can do it in the pseudo classes that we make up our links with. And this one, text decoration, I changed it to underline. So I added it back in when I went to hover. Okay, that's some general ideas. Now let me give you something more specific. I want to show you what I did to the links in this page. Before I get to that stuff, I have the regular link styling. Okay, here's the regular link styling. Before I went and did all this other A stuff way down here. I had the special classes with those, right? Here's the regular link styling. It's a little different from what you did in the exercise too. I wanted to show you that I added a font weight of bold, which I think can be useful. Isn't required. Yes, I think this color is the same and this color is the same as the exercise. But look what I did here. I took on focus and hover. In these, it is true, focus and hover can be switched, order to. On focus and hover, I changed the color, and then I switched the background color to be what the regular color was before. So in other words, the color became the background color, and the color itself became the text color. So I switched those two. I only did it on here. Actually, here's a better example right here. So I switched those two. And then active, we don't see it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So let me show you how this is different. If we go back to the document, so I'm talking about these links. See how they're a little bolder to start with? They stand out a little more. Same here and same here, right? Yes. But now when I hover over them, the color of the text is that purple. It becomes the color of the background. And the color of the background becomes the color of the text. So that is something a little different you can consider doing. Makes them stand out a little more like that. Okay. So that's a little bit more of a review of links. Now I'm going to show you something else. First of all, what if we wanted to add a photo to this? Now this is not part of any of your exercises you have to do this week, but it'll be coming up soon. So I want to show you in advance. Okay, you want to add a photo. So let me add a photo. And I've got one here, sitting here waiting to put in. I put in a comment someplace here. Where is it? Here it is. I'm going to grab this IMG here. It's called Beans. Okay, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to stick it right in here, right above the black beans, right? So that makes sense. So I'm going to save it and run it. And here's the image beans here now. It would look nice on a menu, I think. But there's some problems, right? Well, every time we've used images so far, we haven't used them down in text. Okay, when we use them in text, we have to do something called, we want the text to flow around them, we have to do something called floating. So we have to float this image. All right, but also notice this image, we need to be able to name this image, right? We need to be able to name this image. I only have one image on this page, but that's unusual. Usually I have more than one image. So how am I gonna name it? I'm gonna give it an ID. Okay, I'm gonna give it an ID called beans. All right, so now I can do things to the thing called beans, and that will be doing it to this. All right. And if I had other images, they would have other IDs. Because maybe I do different things to them, right? So how do I float something? I put my floating. Where did I put my floating? Here it is. Okay, yeah. We're going to grab this thing right here. Ignore that I have other things there, which I'm going to be using in a minute. So we tell the beans to float right. And that's floating right. It's on the right side of the page. Because these lines break like this, it makes it seem like we have a margin here, but we don't really. We'll see that we make it float to the left. Let's do that now. That's floating to the right. This is floating to the left. You guess what's going to happen, right? There is no float center. Don't try to float center. It's not a real thing. Okay, yes, it floats there, but things are touching it, right? That's an issue, right? Also, we want to have a caption with this. How are we going to put a caption in here? Well, we could just take the text for a caption, which I have down here in the beans area. Oops. I'm going to say beans are very healthy and tasty. That's true. Okay. And I'm going to put it right below the image, right? What happens if I do that? I'm going to save it and run it. Well, the problem is beans are very healthy and tasty comes over here because it's not floating. So how do I make the text float with the image? Well, a couple of things. We'll go over this in more detail in the future, but you will learn in the future that to float text, it needs to have a size. Images have a size by their nature. Also, to float text with an image, it needs to be in the same container. We need to put a container around them. How are we going to do that? We're going to do something like this. I'm going to put a div. See what I'm doing here? I'm going to put some blank lines here so you can see it better. I made a container called a div. I gave the div the ID and put the image and the text inside of it. Okay? So now I float the container, not just the image. And when I go up to the floating area now, I have to also give it some size. Got something else there I don't want to deal with. Okay, where am I? Where am I? There I am. Okay, I'm going to give it some size. And just to move ahead quickly, because this is not really part of this exercise, I'm going to also give it a margin to the right to push things away. And here it goes. Let's run this. And there it is, very nicely. And of course, I could style that text differently to make it look more like a caption. If I don't like the space there, I could do something with that. But that's the idea of floating an image and floating some text as a caption and how we use those. Last thing I want to tell you, and this is stuff I would have actually done in an extra credit exercise if we had spring break, so I'm throwing it in here. See how we have this whole page, the background of this whole page is one color. What if you want to have a different color, or perhaps no color, I suppose, or in this margin area? Some websites are that way. How could you do that? Well, there's a few ways. Well, there's one main way, and it's called a wrapper. I want to introduce you to the wrapper idea. That's W wrapper. Starts with W. I have taken an HTML, piece of HTML, a div called a wrapper. I just gave it a name wrapper, right? And I've stuck it around everything. It opens at the very beginning and it closes down below. So what it becomes is a container around what we think of as the body material, but not the background. So it's a container around all the text and images and stuff on a page. I'm going to go up here. Now that wrapper right now, where are we? Here it is. What if we gave that wrapper, okay, a background color of a current background color? See, normally this stuff is handled in the body. We're going to do it here. Okay, and we gave the background, the body background color, a different color. So what the wrapper is all the stuff we think of as the body. It's all the text area, right? But the rest that remains would be the margins. So that's going to be this color now, and this is going to be this color. And I put a little padding in there too. Now this color I chose is not so good, but you'll see, at least you'll be able to notice it. So this now is a different color in the margin area. So the idea of a wrapper goes around all the way around here. What we think of as the body area, the content, but what remains is the margin area. It's still part of the body, as in body element, so it's still affected there. So it's as if we have this color all the way underneath everything, but we're only seeing it on the edges. Okay, that was some tangents, but also a review of some link material you will need as we move along.